The Courtauld Gallery in London has been criticised after it placed what's been branded a woke warning alongside one of the most famous paintings in its collection. A message alongside Manet's Bar at Folies Bergère says the woman in the painting's enigmatic expression is unsettling, especially as she appears to be interacting with a male customer. This is the Mail Online's history correspondent Harry Howard, who has been covering this story. He joins me now. Harry Howard, everyone. So what's been going on here? What is the reason behind the message? What is it that the gallery curators are trying to do here?
Well, it seems to be they're trying to it's a kind of woke attempt to call out misogyny.
Right.
But it seems kind of ill-judged because it doesn't seem to be that it's really the barmaid that's the main subject of the painting, and actually in focusing on the man, they're kind of almost centering the male gaze, really.
So you think that this is actually drawing attention to that potential interpretation of the painting in their warning?
Yeah.
So why is it at the moment that there seems to be this standard thing in galleries and museums? You know, there's always been explanatory panels next to paintings which offer a background and details about the work of art. But increasingly I'm seeing panels that are inviting you to interpret it in a particular way, one that is very specifically ideologically driven. Am I wrong about this?
No, I mean, there was the Hogarth exhibition at the Tate Britain, which ended last month. And I had a few friends that went there, and they all said, you know, that they would just felt bombarded by the messaging, which was essentially that the slavery, the sexual violence, racism, anti-Semitism, that was allegedly in Hogarth's paintings. His self-portrait of him sitting on a wooden chair. They couldn't not mention the fact that mahogany was possibly shipped from slave regions. So, you know, it's very much making the viewer, they're trying to impress a view on the viewer.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very specific idea. I mean, that is a particularly egregious example, I think, the idea that, you know, there's a chair in this painting and at this time would have been sourced through slavery. I mean, it's tenuous in the extreme, really. Do you think people are reacting against this? Do you think people who consume art, they quite like having the space to interpret the work themselves, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, with the barmaid in the Manet painting, I mean, surely what's most interesting is what's she thinking, not the man that you can barely see in the side of the painting. So, you know, we should be allowed to sort of think for ourselves rather than having lefty curators kind of shove views down our throat.
Now, it's interesting. I don't know if we can get the image of the painting back up on the screen, but it'd be interesting to look at this and see the man is a marginal figure within that work. And like you say, there is something quite enigmatic about the face of the woman, and we don't know for sure what she's thinking. And that is that lacuna where we can bring our own interpretation into the work. And I often feel sometimes, I deliberately don't read those panels, you know, because I want to come up with my own views on the painting. This talks specifically about the male gaze. You can see there in the top right corner the image of the gentleman looking at her. And that is an interesting aspect of that painting as well. But this view of the male gaze, it's old, isn't it? I mean, I remember this from when I was at university and studying English. And the male gaze was something, but what does that actually mean? What are they trying to say there?
I don't know. I think it's. I think the historian E.P. Thompson warned us against the condescension of posterity, i.e., looking at the past with a 21st century gaze, and trying to put our morals onto the past. And it seems to be that that's what they've done. They try to shoehorn sexism in essentially when it isn't really there.
Do you think do you not think, though, that interpretation is in of itself valid? Because art opens the door to all forms of interpretations, doesn't it?
I think absolutely it's valid. It just has to, you know, it's got a time and a place. And I just don't think this particular painting is, you could possibly have a sexist interpretation, in my view.
And do you think this is very much specifically of our moment, that people are responding to this very sort of hermetic moment in time, and this will all go away, and this will change, and ultimately people will, you know, stop trying to push this agenda in every single aspect of public life?
I'm not sure. I think it seems to have almost gathered pace. I mean, we've had the National Gallery has had a 3-year review into linking paintings to slavery. We've had, obviously, the National Trust with linking Churchill's Chartwell to the slave trade because he was Secretary of State for the colonies.
Yes.
And hundreds of other properties. So I don't think it's something that's going to go away. It just seems to have. This is just the latest thing. You know.
It seems to have infected the arts in particular and the creative industries. And you know, I'm from that background. I know a lot of comedians, writers, artists, directors, and they all seem to be following. They're in lockstep on this view. Why is it that the people you would expect to be the most free thinkers in society seem to be the most conformist at the moment?
Well, it seems to be maybe the way that the left is going. I don't know, but it does seem to be, that's the way it's going. I mean, surely maybe Titania McGrath would have a great joy.
She would have a view on this, yes. What do you did write a satirical sort of tongue-in-cheek article, didn't you, about suggestions of other works that might need these kind of, well, let's call them trigger warnings.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples?
Yeah, so Picasso's Guernica obviously depicts the Nazis bombing of the Spanish town of the same name, and you might want to have a scenes of distress trigger warning on that.
Yes, you would.
Van Gogh's self-portrait, The Bandaged Ear, obviously he cut his ear off. You might want to have a self-harm one there. Obviously, Michelangelo's David, he's naked, may contain nuts. Well, yeah, there's several others, so,
There's an interesting thing about this, though, isn't there? So the concept of the trigger warning, to an extent it makes sense if you're a parent, right? And if you've got a warning on a film or something saying this contains this kind of content, and it's good to know as a parent, but there's a kind of infantilizing quality about trigger warnings that are aimed at adults, particularly in universities, because what they're effectively saying is that you're not really an adult, you need us to look after you. But also art and literature deal with difficult themes, don't they? That's part of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I've been dealing with trigger warnings since I was a student journalist. We had the student union used to try and shoehorn them into our newspaper. So they're obviously not old. They're not new. But, they are quite infantilizing because they, basically say this might upset you when, it's unlikely to. So.
And it's also, I will defer to the judgment of expertise on this, but cognitive behavioural therapists know that this is actually the worst thing you can do. If someone suffered trauma, is to completely isolate them from any reference to that trauma is actually the opposite of what you should be doing. I mean, this is what I have read and have been told. Is that not right?
Yeah, I think so. You're almost making them think about that thing by saying warning, whatever.
Yes.
Just let them make their own mind up. It goes back to the same thing of curators kind of shoving views down our throat rather than letting us interpret it for what it is.
And it is a particular worry with art, isn't it? Because I think this is the field of human experience where people are going to express all manner of things and fully across the spectrum of the potential of human thought. And if we have these narrow conditions, these ideas that this is the way things either must be created or must be interpreted, then that just limits the entire field. I mean, is it too much to say that this is the collapse of art if we go down this road? I like to be histrionic from time to time.
Yes. I mean, it's worrying in the sense that there doesn't seem to be much pushback. And it seems to be all our major cultural institutions, to some extent, they do seem to have a mild disdain for the things they're looking after. Maybe that's unfair, but I don't know. But it's worrying. Just the direction is worrying.
What do you think about? It's not just the art and what is depicted within the art, but this new fascination with are the artists themselves morally pure? So there's been sort of a lot of discussion about Picasso's behaviour. People have described him as sexually predatory, for instance. Obviously, the Eric Gill statue of Ariel and Prospero at the BBC was attacked with a hammer because he was not a nice person. He did some very terrible things during his lifetime. Why do you think there is this idea now that artists must be morally pure by our standards of today? Why has that come about, do you think?
I don't know. It seems to be a kind of a twisted form of religion almost, just searching for purity. And, no one is free of sin, essentially. So it's like, where does it stop? Obviously, even Karl Marx, he seems to be free of this because he was pretty dodgy. So.
Well, I would say that's an interesting point, isn't it? That often this is directed in one way politically. I mean, Karl Marx said some explicitly racist things that, with no way. I don't see people trying to cancel him. I don't see people trying to take down his bust at Highgate Cemetery. This isn't happening.
No.
So it's one way.
Yeah, it is one way. I mean, obviously, with the BLM protests 3 years ago, there was 2 years ago with Churchill's statue, and then obviously a cascade of statues that were targeted. It just seemed to be that they were old and white. That was the thing they had in common. And disregard everything they might have done or said. It was just all about that.
Well, I don't think this is going away anytime soon because this is going to go on and on, especially when it comes to the arts. But thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you. I should say we did contact the Courtauld Gallery for a comment. This was their response. So in a statement, they said, all of the Courtauld Gallery's labels were reviewed and rewritten in advance of the reopening of the gallery in November 2021. They therefore reflect and acknowledge the latest scholarship as is relevant for one of the world's preeminent centres for the study of art history.